Thank you, Bill. I have been mayor of Wilmington for 1 month and 5 days.
And you're in the office every day.
Well, I am, yeah. But who's counting, those things. But so far, things have been going pretty well. It's pretty much what I expected. A little bit overwhelming at first because there's so many things and people are starting to settle down. I think whenever there's a new administration, people worry about their jobs, or we're going to, lose our jobs and so on. But we're to the point now where most of them know that's not the case. We had replaced about 5 department heads, but that's it. That's all we replaced. That's all. But I want to say before I begin, because I'm not being critical of my predecessor in any way, but there had been a difference I'm finding in our philosophies as far as the mayor's position is concerned. Because, John, we all know John Stanforth, he's a good man, and we just had sort of different points of view, I think, as far as the city's concerned. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the reality of what I found in the first month or so that I've been there. And the city has about 200 and some employees in the various departments. We have streets, we have water, police, fire. We have transit, which is a big one. And so with those departments, we have quite a few employees, as you can imagine. And I've always said, you could plan the nicest building in the world, the nicest business, have everything set up, and when you start having issues is when you start hiring people. Because human nature is such that a lot of our time is taken up with personnel issues. That's just a fact, nothing you can do about it. But we deal with those things as they come up. I want to start with the police department to describe what we have found. And in law enforcement, one of the important components is the evidence room. Whenever a crime is committed, evidence has to be collected and it has to be maintained. And there's a chain of evidence that is prepared when you go to court. You have to be able to account. Where did it come from? Who touched it? Where's it been? And have you recorded it? Well, quite frankly, an audit was done about 2 or 3 months ago on the evidence room. Totally dysfunctional. They came back with terrible news for the police department. No one's fault particularly, but it's going to take a major overhaul to fix that, because any criminal case can be thrown out if the evidence isn't secure. So it turned in to be one of the biggest issues, at least in the first month, that we're dealing with. And how we dealt with this, and this is probably news, I don't know if it has been in the paper yet, but Chief Ron Fithen, who's been chief for about 18 months, he resigned as chief of police on Friday, and now he's transitioning into a new role, which is to oversee this evidence room and be able to basically start from scratch and rebuild it. The auditors, when they came to town, they were able to give suggestions and policy on what we should do to fix this. And of course, Chief Fithen has 32 years of law enforcement, so he knows about this. He knows how to fix it. And he's also going to be charged with the police department, well, as I said, the evidence room, but he'll also be grant writing. We've never had a grant writer in the city, and so he's going to do that for us. And then we have been bombarded in the last, not we, but the city's been bombarded in the last year or two with open records requests. A lot of people want to know what's going on, and of course, there's been some controversy in the city for the last year or two, and they want to have these open records. So these 3 positions are very, very critical right now to the city of Wilmington. It's internal, but it is critical. And so Chief Fippen, he's, like I said, he's had 32 years in. Law enforcement is a very stressful job. And being the chief of police, if you can imagine, every single day. And so when we talked to him about it, we thought this could be good for him. Obviously, it'd be good for the city if he was willing to do it. So we suggested to him, and he thought about it and came back and said, yeah, I'll do that. So I think we have a win-win situation. It's going to take a little bit of time, but he's very knowledgeable and he'll do very well. His new title is Police Executive for Administrative Services. And he will still be a sworn officer, but his role will change now and he'll be looking into these things that I described. We're very lucky to have him to do this for us. As a result, we have an opening now for chief of police. And we needed to have an interim chief, and we've named Bob Wilson, who's a sergeant. And Bob has been with the department for many years. He served as a detective. He's currently a sergeant. And he has a rich background as a detective supervisor and patrol sergeant within the department. And I believe his leadership skills will serve the city well. We're going to meet with him at 11 o'clock, I think, or 12, and just kind of get a little more on his background and talk to him. But this is fresh news. We're moving that direction. And at some point, in due course, really, a civil service test will be held, and then a new chief will be named. And there'll be testing, there'll be interviews, and so if anyone else is interested, it's interesting because in the city of Wilmington, the chiefs of police have to come internally. So they have to come from within the department the way the rules are set up. So sergeants can take the test, and if one of those individuals is not selected, then it's opened up to the whole department. And then, if no one is selected, we can open it up to the outside. But I don't think in the history of Wilmington Police Department that's ever happened. I don't think we've ever had an outside chief, because we've always had some pretty qualified people that step forward, and my guess is it probably will happen again. So that'll be coming.
So what's the size of the police department? How many policemen do we have?
I would say maybe around 24 or 5.
Okay.
We're short about 5 officers. And that's been part of the problem because they just run from one call to another all day long. And Wilmington, like all police departments in the United States, they're having trouble recruiting simply because of all the media coverage in the last few years. People don't be law enforcement officers. And that's a problem. The pay in Wilmington is not too bad compared to some of the other surrounding areas. So it's not a pay issue. It's more of a, I don't want to do it, but those who do are really looking for a superior law enforcement operation. Things have changed. You know, of course, I was sheriff in 1980 to 88. And during those years, a lot of things have changed in law enforcement. Number one, we didn't have DNA testing. We didn't have all the sophistication that if we solved crime, it was solved because we were out knocking on doors and doing that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it's easier, but not much has changed. We still have the same characters that we deal with. The faces have changed, but the mentalities haven't. And so probably the biggest change is the drugs that have hit the United States. And even in Wilmington, we're dealing with that. We can't escape it. It's all relative. We don't have the same number of crimes they have in Cleveland, but we have the same crimes. Just fortunately, not quite as often. And we've been having a lot of petty crime around town too. So that's a real area that we're putting a lot of time into. I don't know if you know Mike Cluxton, but Mike Cluxton was a detective captain when I was sheriff, and he joined me, and he's my assistant. So we have two people with law enforcement background, which is unusual, that I think we can lend support and understand some of the challenges that the police department's facing. And we intend to do that. We want to build it, we want to strengthen it, we want to do everything we can. And you hear this all the time, but we're really dedicated to this, make it one of the best departments in the area. And I think we can do that. Some of it's just going to take a little tinkering, but also whenever change comes about, especially with police officers, they're a little bit slow to adjust to it until they can get their arms around it and feel like it's a good thing. But the core department is a good department. And we're going to work hard to do everything we can support them. We would like to get more officers. Of course, that's up to the council. It's costly. The pensions are very costly, the fringes, and the salaries are, like I said, not too bad here in Wilmington compared to some of the other areas. Last Thursday, I had delivered the State of the City address. And one of the things I reported is that the city is strong because the people are strong. And that's very true. Wilmington has been very resilient. They've had issues that they've had to face and have always been very effective at facing those issues. And I was thinking over the weekend after Bill and I talked, I believe this is probably the third, maybe even the fourth time, going way back, that I've spoken to the 311 Club. And one of the things that we are really going to focus on as a city right now, because it's needed, is public safety. And we're going to take some steps, some bold steps, we think, to enhance the quality of life in Wilmington. And to do that is an enormous, complex, complicated issue that we face. I also want to say that education remains a cornerstone of the city. This year, we've joined the city schools to emphasize safety, as students will soon be walking on paths and trails, safe sidewalks. We're going to change some of the crosswalks at the elementary school, Denver Place, homeschool, because we want to make sure that when children cross the street that it's safe. And we do have crossing guards, that many of them, but I think we need more lighting, flashing lights sometimes to slow the traffic down. So the city has the schools have a program, and we join with them to supply money and whatever we can supply to them to see that that helps. Housing is an important issue right now. Of course, you know, the Honda plant in Washington Courthouse is still on schedule, although I know there have been some concerns about the electric cars and how well they're selling. But this, right now, they're on course because they're going to be manufacturing batteries for the electrical cars. And if it gets completed, which I think it will, then there's going to be a need for housing. It'll be over into Clinton County too. So our position is we want to get the right housing in the right locations. I think that's important because we need to keep the character of the city. We shouldn't just put houses because a developer comes to town and says, well, we need it here. We need to listen to the people in the community that it's a good site location to make sure that it fits well in the neighborhood. But I can tell you this, there are two possible, whether one is going to be a pretty good sized housing development that's still in the works. And then there might be another one that comes forth, which would almost take care of the housing problem in Wilmington. We're talking a lot of houses. And so, of course, out of Timberland, they put in a little new, we wouldn't call it a subdivision, but it's part of that subdivision there in the back. And those homes seem to be selling pretty well there. One of the developers has come forward, as you probably read in the paper, and wants to put some housing in that green space at the entrance. I think that's probably going to be controversial. because some of the council members have indicated they're not sure about the location, but there's a process to it, and it'll work itself through that process. So I feel that, the right thing will be done. I don't have a vote on council as mayor. I sit there and listen, I can speak and express my opinion, but it's up to the council to approve those types of things, so I'm sure it'll work out.
Pat?
Yes.
How many units are going in on North Lincoln?
Mark, that has changed some, and I can't tell you exactly the number. It's something that I had called this morning, of all things, that's our service director, to give me the number there and also the number out at proposed at Timber Glen. So I can't tell you. It's, I know they've broken ground. They're putting in some of the foundations and so on. So it looks like that's going to move forward, but I just can't tell you the number, unfortunately. But if you call the office, we can get it for you.
117 is the
Oh,
last.
is that what it is, Mike?
That's the last
Okay.
that I've heard. And there was a slight change from the original,
Yeah,
but I think right now in my mind it's 117.
that sounds
And it's
right
done
to me.
it's done in two segments.
That's right.
One segment is
Yeah.
looking really close to being ready to open up, and the other segment
That's right.
where the theater backdrop is, that'll be coming later.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah.
So I'd say it'd be a trip to work today.
That's okay. Go home.
Yeah, I'll let go in. But it's moving along. They're, like I said, they've broken ground, they're putting in infrastructure and so on.
Is that the more affordable housing style?
I think so, but so many of the developers will price those pretty high publicly. But I think, obviously, the free market's going to determine how much a house sells for. So I'm just not sure what they'll go for, Mark. But I hope that, they're affordable because we need the housing. So. And one of the things that we're doing, we're working with the Port Authority to bring more retail downtown. Some of you can remember, I can, I know Niall and I are about the same age, we can remember when downtown Wilmington boomed.
You're older, Pat.
No. Graduated. But I do remember, because like all small towns, the small towns used to boom. There weren't the competition of Walmart, there wasn't the competition as a shopping center. But it was in the probably early 60s when they built a shopping center, and some of the downtown merchants, Murphy's at the time, they went out there, and some of the others went out there, and it really cut a hole in the downtown. So we need to have services. A lot of people talk about it, but I was over in Xenia not too long ago, and I was talking to a gentleman who owned the business. And I said, you ever thought about coming to Wilmington? He said, yeah, it's funny you say that. I have thought of it. And so we're working on that to see if we can bring him down here. And we need to multiply that, because if we do, it'll change the downtown, it'll change the atmosphere of the town. And it's always good to do business with local businesses when we can. So I just think it's a good thing. It would be nice if we had some ice cream shops and bakeries, so things that we want to go downtown to do. But we're not unique. You go through the small towns and so many of the windows are vacant. And those of us at a certain age remember when that wasn't the case, that downtown was a centerpiece. I was talking to Bob. Bob Pisser is putting together a reunion on March the 13th of county basketball tournaments, those who played in the tournaments, the villages. And that's a good example of how things had changed, because I was born in Port William, but Port William was self-contained. We had a bank, a post office, 2 grocery stores, a hardware store, 2 restaurants. And so when the schools consolidated in the 60s, it just cut the heart out of these towns. We've never recovered from it, really. The towns still exist, but they're not the same hometowns that some of us remember, and probably never will be. But It's those kind of things that if we can grab a hold of as a town, we're going to be better off. If you look at the Green, for example, that's not the typical mall under a roof. Basically, it's an old hometown with sidewalks, streets, and businesses. And that's the way it used to be on South Street and Locust and Main Street. And I'm not foolish enough to think that we're going to reestablish that or back to the 50s. But I do think if we can recruit businesses, retail businesses, we're going to be better off. So that's an important thing. I would like to get that going, accelerated. If we're going to work hard at it, I met with the Port Authority. We have an economic development director there, and we met last week and we discussed this, and he's in agreement. If we can give him the leads, he's going to follow up. So we'll see what happens. Additionally, I'm committed to devising a comprehensive common sense plan for improved traffic flow throughout the city. And I had a discussion with the city engineer about traffic and lights and signs. And I was very frank with him because when I was running for office, there are three big issues. The first one was vagrancy that I talked about. And the second one was Rombach Avenue, which surprised me a little bit. A lot of dissatisfaction with the number of signs, the number of lights, and they were certainly going to put in some barriers or median strips. That didn't happen, but we've taken a look at that. Actually, the first day, I think we took down 25 no-left turn signs. So when I talked to the engineer, I asked him, I said, were you involved in this? And he said, yes. And I said, why put all these things out there? He said, we overdid it. He overdid it. And I think that happened, and sometimes with government it does. But the problem is we live here, and we're the ones dealing with it every day. So the voice I want to bring, I made it very clear to him that we're going to consider the community, not necessarily just what the professional ODOT engineers recommend. We want to have a good relationship with them, of course, but we also want to make sure that what we do traffic-wise makes sense. Timing of lights is important. We came through town, Brenda and I came through town last night, and just noticed we get every light red. It didn't make any sense. Why? Because there wasn't much traffic on Sunday night, but that's what happened. So we have some people that can time these lights so that it flows better. You're not going to see people going 70 miles an hour through town. I mean, you might once in a while, but that's the exception. Normally, if the traffic is flowing at a reasonable speed, the safety factor is still there too. So we're going to look at that as well. Lane markings, I found a little confusing. I always shoot past the turn to go to the post office. Then I have to go and backtrack. And it's confusing because there's two lanes. One is going this direction, then all of a sudden it's coming this way, and I'm thinking, gee, I'm going to get head on. And first thing I know, I'm around it, missed my turn. So we're taking a look at those things. It's not going to be a radical change, but I think just using common sense will help a little bit. That's what I want to do. And to do that, ODOT, of course, is a funding source. And like all government agencies, they like to tie the money to power and control. But fortunately, Wilmington has the home rule that we have the loudest voice, and we can do what we need to do. And I think a lot of that is just communications, talking with them, explaining to them. And I can give you an example. Mike Klutz and I, just 2 weeks ago, happened to come into a meeting, and the engineer, the group of people, were talking about crosswalks throughout Wilmington. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm the mayor, this first I've heard of this. I remember reading about it, some year or so ago. But nobody bothered to tell me. So what it was, keeping in mind the problems we've had in Rombach They want to put a crosswalk outside the city building over to the Mexican restaurant. And I'm going, can you imagine? You stop at South Street, you get a light. You go up 50 yards, 2 people are crossing the crosswalk, and you stop again. Then you go to Mulberry and you stop again. You talk about backing up traffic. That's going to happen pretty quickly. And here's the kicker. Both these streets, Mulberry and South Street, they have lights. All you have to do is walk up there and cross the street. And I said, I'm not going to approve that. And he wanted to express his opinion pretty strongly, but I said, look, I'm not going to sign it. So you might as well tell him I'm not going to do that. And I think that's where we live here and we know these issues. And there's one that really scares me a little bit. They want to put one down by the old Smith Place School across. And, you know, we've crossed that street for years and years and years and years. Fortunately, that's not been a problem. But I remember when my son used to play basketball at Smith Place, and he would cross that street. So let's say we put a crosswalk there. And a 10-year-old boy or girl, sometimes they'll just, when they think the light's green, they'll walk across and they won't even look. What if a semi-truck came through? They're not used to that. And I think you have to weigh those things. There hasn't been a problem. Is it jaywalking? Yeah. But don't most people want to jaywalk? I think they do. Cross the street, you know, they won't go in there to hotel, same thing. But my goodness, the traffic lights at the edge of that door, what you do is walk there and cross, which we do. It's a shortcut. But I think putting some of those crosswalks up in those areas will be more of a hazard because people won't be used to it. And somebody run through there. Tony?
I think, I may be wrong, but I think a hole has been dug in front of everybody's house and everybody's lawn on Main Street at Lois. When are they going to pave those streets? Yeah, that's really necessary.
It is. You know, street pavement is very, very important because if you've been on South Street at Locust, have you noticed how rocky it is and bumpy all the way through there? Well, that's a state highway. And to me, those are the things that need attention.
Yes.
And so there's only so much money to go around, but that's going to be my emphasis as mayor on these streets that need repair.
Good.
So I say that to you. Of course, you know, it's a financial situation.
Yes.
But there is money available. And we'll work with ODOT to get some of these things
Well,
done.
you know, Mulberry Street was paved, and I think Mulberry Street's a nice street, but compared to Locust and Main, it's a side street.
It is.
And yet, you drive down Locust Street from, say, South Street on out to 73, man, you hit bump up. It's just uncomfortable. And I think those streets need to be repaired. It's been going every year. I think, well, they're going to do it in the spring. Well, they're going to do it in the summer. They're going to do it in the fall. It hasn't been done. So it's obvious that those things need to be done.
Do you know David Stewart was a former county commissioner?
Yes.
Well, he's a new street superintendent, and David and I are on the same page.
Good.
Actually, we ride around and we look at this. But I don't need real technical equipment to determine what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I just put Brenda, my wife, in the car, and she goes, you got to do something about these streets. I said, Brenda, I've only been in a month. But anyway, I agree with you, Tony, and those are the things we are going to look at.
Just a point.
No, it is a good
Thank you.
point. So,
I think they've done a good job with the streets they've worked on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they have improved a lot of the streets in town.
Sure.
yeah, they have. John's done a very nice job of doing that, and we want to continue that because it's important. Those are the things people appreciate, and that's what makes a good town. You know, if you can get in your car and not have bumps, and yes, sir.
We're talking about that kind of thing. Right up here, second line up, I don't know my street system, let's see, I guess Locust Street. You come out here and you want to turn to go to Cape May. The right-hand lane says you can go ahead and turn right, and you don't have to stop at the red light. But the problem is there's usually 4 people in front of you that are stopped there. Why don't they put a sign up there about a half block before that says this lane is for through traffic and this lane is for right turn only? And then stop all that.
you know, you're okay if you've lived here all your life and you're familiar with it. But if you haven't, it's a little different. That's a good point. I think what they want to do is put up some kind of warning signs to let you know. So it's a good one. The other place they have one similar is up at Xenia Avenue that turns right on the south. If you're from here, you're used to it, but if you're not, cars will stop there.
Sure.
And then horns start honking. And so signage is a good thing. They also brought out on West Main, if you remember, there was a fatal accident, I think maybe during the fair last year, when a car went the wrong way and they had that head-on collision and killed that young man. We talked about that because this is not real official. But if you're coming out this way, there's that little leg off that hits Locust Street, and then you turn left on Locust, and then you get back on 22. And I asked the engineer, I said, why don't we just eliminate that little dog leg, just have it going out and let South Street merge? And we would eliminate 2 stops. And I think what happened last summer, there are probably other considerations, but the person went the wrong way and then they had that head-on collision. So we're going to take a look at that as well. One of the most important things too, and I keep listing everything as important, but it is, and this month we talked about every single one of them, but the transit system. The biggest shock I had, to be honest with you, when I took over, 2 days before I took office, I had received a letter from ODOT. And ODOT was very, very concerned about the operation of the city transit system. And they said, I want to meet with you. They want to meet with me the first day I took office. So they did. They came from Columbus for about 4 of them. And they outlined the problems. And the problems are considerable. And one of the things that had happened is a communication had broken off between the city and ODOT. They would send texts, they would call, they want information, they want reports and so on. They were doing that. And so the last 30 days, some decisions were made that weren't consistent with efficiency. And so we met with them and we assured them that we were going to get these things administratively in line, and we're doing that. Jonathan McKay, who was a council member, is the new director. And Jonathan is young and enthusiastic and has really taken this project on and has made some headway. One of the things that had happened, they decided that they wanted to have an app that you could put on your phone, and if you wanted to ride the system, you had to fill out the app, and you had to then have all your information available. It would go through the system, and then it would be dispatched. Well, the problem was many people who ride the transit system, number one, don't have phones. Number two, don't know what an app is. And so ridership went down 40% within the 2 to 3 month period. And of course, ODOT is sitting there in Columbus going, what's going on? And so when I came in, I put a moratorium on that app and said, let's go back to a system that's working for now. And if somebody wants to go from their home to Kroger, pick up the phone and say, I want to go to Kroger's, and they'll say, we'll be out and pick you up. That's as complicated as it needs to be. It's working, ridership's going back up. But ODOT wants this system because it helps them with their reporting system. And that's good. I'm not against it if it's something that'll work. But I can tell you, my sister Rita, she's probably not going to get an app on her phone to ride transit. And I think many people her age feel the same way. And that's a major population of ridership in Wilmington. So we're working with them. We're getting things sorted through, and I think things will work out. But there again, to me, it just seemed like common sense. You know, if it's not working, let's stop it. The government doesn't always do that. They continue programs and try to force it. But ODOT was willing to listen and said, okay, we'll do that. So that's where we're, oh,
No, I'm, one's enough.
How are you gonna do that?
another critical issue that we're going to have to deal with is the fire department. I don't know if you've been down to the fire department lately, but that building was built in 1960. Of course, you'll remember that. You remember when that first brick was laid?
When your dad,
No.
fire chief down there.
No, he wasn't like. So anyway, that's a critical issue. The building is no longer really functional. The trucks are that close. I don't know how they open the door. The living quarters, firemen still spend 24 on, 24 off. So they're living there, they're cooking there, they're eating there, and those living quarters are horrendous, really. And we're going to take a look at trying to address those needs in some way. Don't know whether it be a new house, because I can tell you, I am not a taxer. I just am not. But I also believe that the people of Wilmington have always responded to a need. And that is, if you put a tax on or a levy on for a certain period of time and say, once that's completed and you take it off, and guarantee that they'll take it off and don't extend it, then perhaps we can join that kind of funding with grants. And hopefully, Washington Courthouse built a new one, and I was talking to the city manager there, and it cost them about $12 million. But they house the police and the fire departments together, which makes sense. Kill two birds with one stone. And I do feel that that's something that we're going to have to come to grips with. And the other thing, they don't have enough fire personnel sometimes to cover the office or the department. And if they have two calls, they have to call Port William in to stand by. Well, they can only do that so long because, well, if there's a fire or emergency, call out at Port William. Do the same thing with Clarksville. But if you go around to all the small villages, townships, most of them have new fire stations. Wilmington probably has the oldest fire station in the county. And so we have to address it. It's not going to go away. So we'll see how that goes. In other matters too, I want to close, and I've talked about this, before, but one of the pressing issues has been and still is the homeless or the vagrancy issue, what you want to call it. My position has been that we have to have safe streets, because we talk about we're going to build a trail, or we're going to have functions downtown, or we're going to have certain things in the city. But if people don't feel safe, they're not going to use it. And that's just a fact of life. We're blessed in a way. Most of the crime in Wilmington is petty crime. We haven't had a lot of felonies. We have them. And I don't want to stand here and blame everything on the homeless or the vagrants. We have our own homegrown criminals that contribute to it. But we also have a disproportionate amount of quality of life, nuisance kind of things that seem to originate from the whole homeless shelter. In this past year, I think from March to August, there was like 132 calls that the police responded to down there. That's a lot.
At the homeless shelter?
Yeah, we pulled those statistics, and not all of them were serious crimes, I'm not suggesting that, but they were people fighting, people doing things that they shouldn't have to do, but it was serious enough they had to call the police department. And so that's a concern, and I think it's a concern of the people. And we should never really accept homelessness. That's a complex issue. I'm not going to stand up here and say I'm going to solve it, because I'm not going to solve homelessness. What I'm talking about, and I mentioned this before, there seems to be two groups of different people, distinct groups. Those who need help, that we all want to help. And then we have those who kind of tag along, come into town. They're plagued with mental illness, drug addiction. And because of getting free meals, and can just walk around town basically doing what they want, they're causing mischief. And it's a nuisance. And as I said, my wife won't walk on the trail by herself. I wouldn't want her to right now. And we have to get that under control. And the way we're going to do that is through the police department. So we're going to have a very assertive approach to it. And the reason we're going to go that route is because right now, nothing's being done. All we're getting is free meals. And then people walk out that door, they're on their own. But what we have to do is get them into a system, the criminal justice system, where at least the courts have the ability to maybe mandate treatment or direct them in lieu of incarceration. We're not trying to put everybody in jail. We just want them to get the help that they need. And we've talked about this over and over. It's complex, it's controversial. There's a religious component. But, as a priest told me, he doesn't believe God wants people committing crimes. And so there's two sides to this. We want to be charitable. We want to be helpful. And I know there's a lot of people in town that told me this, they'd love to close the shelter. I don't necessarily share that view if we can make people coming in behave. And the only way we're going to do that is to get their attention that there's consequences, because in the past there's been no consequences. And we're going to crack down on that. And like I said, not just with that group of people, but with crime in general. So that's a big, big challenge. But they do have some programs. And I have obviously given this a lot of thought because it's been at least a year, I think I first brought this up to you. And, is that strong medicine? Yes, it is. But I think the patient needs it right now, and we're going to do it. So I've given thought to an action plan. We talked about this, and things are not getting better. What we need to do, in my opinion, I think we're going to have to collaborate with law enforcement and the courts to create a united system of accountability. Because right now, a lot of people are doing what they want to do, and it's affecting the quality of life of the people. That's important. We can weigh we have to help those in need. I agree with that. But that's not a license to go out and commit crimes. We can't do that in society, or we'll have chaos. We also need to revise some city ordinances to discourage enabling behaviors. And your brother put a nice statue out at Point Park. And we have people sleeping under it. They're littering it. I'm not even going to tell you what I saw happen out there about a month ago. It was really disgusting. And we have to have the ordinances that we can enforce these things, because that's a nice park. And we shouldn't be subject to that, because there's another component to that. And that is, let's say a person's coming to town and thinking about, we might bring a business to Wilmington. And that's the first thing they see. That's not going to go well at all. We need to promote mental health and substance abuse service addressing the root cause. And people don't want to accept this for some reason. And that is, mental illness and addiction plays a major, major part in the people that we're dealing with. No fault of their own. I bet you they wake up every day thinking, Lord, let me feel better. But sometimes you just can't control it. And so that's where we step in and try to help them. There's different social agencies trying to help, but I found they're competitive because there's a money component involved. And if we could unite that in some way and make sure that everybody's on the same page, I think that would be a good thing. There are people, if you ride by the downtown, they're in the prime of their lives. They could work, but for one reason or another, they can't. And I think it's important, and I've talked to a former teacher who has done this all his career, a trade school teacher, principal, actually, that he could help them with job training, and he could help them with placement programs, because some of the simple things we take for granted, they may not know how to fill out a resume, or they may not know how to fill out an application. And they can be helped with these individuals. They can help these individuals do that, but somebody's got to take the leadership role and say, this is important if we're going to try to solve this problem. I'm going to meet with the CEO at Clinton Memorial Hospital to see if they would give any consideration to reopening that inpatient service. Because we've had cases, some serious cases. The police get a call and a guy's downtown with a sword, waving it in the air, threatening people. They don't have where to take them. They take them out to the hospital. The emergency room doctor looks at them. Well, he's not doing a psychological evaluation. He's looking at it from the standpoint of medical. And if we could get Clinton Memorial to open the inpatient, and if people need that treatment, at least that acute treatment, maybe we can break this cycle. I don't know how that's going to go, but that's one of the things we're going to do. And again, we certainly encourage the churches to continue to supply the spiritual leadership that's needed. And it's a very complex issue, but it's something that we've been dealing with, and somebody has to say, look, enough's enough. Let's try to get a plan together and fix this problem if we're going to. So, one of the things I would like to do is streamline this under one coordinator. Have one person in the city in charge of this that brings the groups together, because right now everybody's doing their own thing and it's not working that I can see. So anyway, I want to thank you for having me, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, talk about the hospital. How's it get paid for? The hospital can't get paid for nothing.
Oh, no, they won't, and I think that's why we have to look at combination of services, because a lot of money is going out, but we need to have the cooperation. And the agencies, most of them are outpatient. And so we're going to have obviously some funding, probably some grant money, and all we can do is look into it, Bill.
Do you have any idea how many of the homeless can actually work? People get tired of being talking about Germany, but I think we've lost a lot of our work ethic in this country. In Germany, people don't want to take assistance. They want to work. By the way, jaywalking is illegal, and you get fined for it. And the same thing about crossing red lights. And then most of their crimes are petty crimes, right, like not paying the fare to get on the subway. That's but they don't have the violent crimes like we have.
Well, and it's kind of what we're talking about in Wilmington right now. I don't want to say they're not violent crimes, because there's some, but the majority of what I'm talking about are petty crimes right now. We just continue to.
What are you talking about, petty crimes? What kind of?
Oh, kid buys a bicycle, puts it on his porch, somebody steals it.
Okay.
Throwing needles in the park, on the sidewalk, shoplifting, doing all those kinds of things. Trespassing is a big deal. The city has a drone. They look for encampments that I know I've had complaints. A doctor called me and said, look, I'm not trying to cause trouble, but there's a camp down here on my property. Is there anything can be done about it? So those kind of things. But it does affect quality of life. Plus, the behavior of some of the people, and my wife was telling me she was accosted at the church. I was twice this month, with people being very aggressive, getting in your face. Do you have any money? And it scares people. 2 elderly women came in, and I say elderly, here I am. I can't believe it sometimes. But anyway, not to get off track, they said that a man come up, scared them to death. They were in church by themselves, and they didn't know what he was going to do. Didn't have any money. They just want to give him money and move him on. Well, so often that cash is given, is used for drugs and alcohol. They don't go out to McDonald's and get something to eat. That's what happens, because they're, obviously, they feed a lot of people, so food isn't the issue. And it's counterproductive to give them that. But anyway, Bill, to answer your question, we're just going to have some discussion, see what we can do. I think it's something we have to look at, so. I think.
Have these really nice fire departments around the county. You're right. I guess that must come from federal money, has it? And is it because we're a limited city that they wouldn't be able to get those funds, or do you know anything about that?
I do. We can get those funds, but the driving force has been the townships. And funding sources, they come from various federal governments or federal departments, like Homeland Security might have it. That wouldn't be the first department you would think would be funding fire department, but they do, or the Department of Agriculture. So those funding mechanisms are in place. Why they haven't been pursued, I don't know, but we're going to, and that's when I go back to what we're talking about, the grant writer with Chief Fitton. He'll be able to look at those things, and he's in agreement. So hopefully, we can secure some of those funds.
It would be good. I'm told by a firefighter that every department in the country is shorthanded. It's too bad.
Things we've taken for granted most of our lives no longer are the same. We always felt secure. We always felt we had significant fire protection, and we do have fire protection. But somebody has to drive the trucks. Somebody has to man the hose. We have to have people in the life squad. So one of the first steps to make working in Wilmington more attractive is to do something about the living quarters. Because if you're in competition, say with Warren County or one of the neighboring counties, and you go into their facilities and it's nice, and then you come to Wilmington, you're thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to work there. And that's a problem until we address it. We're not going to be recruiting very well. So.
You mentioned revitalizing the downtown. I'm sorry.
I'm just curious who I get to talk to. The new guy on Lincoln Street,
I'm sorry, what?
the new housing development on Lincoln Street. They put a section of sidewalk, looks like going from the first section to the second section. It's like that far away from the street. And you're talking about safety.
Yeah.
I'll go talk to somebody. I don't think it's safe.
Where did you say that is?
It's on Lincoln Street where they put it by the drive-in, where they came off the new street going north.
Okay.
They ran it out and they looped it out like this, and it's about that far away from the highway.
Where does it go? Just to the highway?
Dead ends. It just turns and the highway runs parallel with the highway for 10 feet. But you can see they're going to extend. What they did was, it looks like there's a drain or something that they went around.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk to, I don't need to talk to you,
No, I don't mind talking to you, because one of the problems really that I face, and again, I'm not being critical, but I've inherited some of these problems because I knew nothing about that. This is the first I've heard of it.
I just saw it the other day and I thought, you gotta be kidding me.
Just call my office and come up. We'll sit down and talk.
Well, I can talk to the engineer, whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Start with me and we'll get it. Start with me and we'll get it.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture.
Does it look unsafe?
It's right there, right before you get to the drive of the drive-in.
Okay.
It literally, it's like, why, there has to be a reason, but it looks
I think there's
odd.
a place where water drains right there.
Could be.
They went around, I saw that the other day and I thought,
So Mike, it comes out to the street and goes nowhere?
Well, no, it comes parallel to the road and then makes like an S curve, literally.
I think it's gonna go to the second edition.
I'll take a look at it. I have
Section.
not seen that, so we'll get with it. If people will come up, I'd be glad to talk to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify something. When you cited the number 100 plus police reports or police calls,
Responses.
responses in a certain time period, Was that the homeless shelter on Gallup Street, or was that?
I might have said,
Ministries?
it was at my father's kitchen.
Oh, my father's kitchen, okay.
Yeah, we pulled that from the police log or their reports.
And then one follow-up, like I used to say when I was a reporter. Does the city of Wilmington already have a law against aggressive panhandling, which sounds like you have mentioned a couple of incidents of that?
I'm not 100% sure it's what we're looking at because it has to be constitutional.
Mm-hmm.
People have the right to stand on the sidewalk and do nothing. I do that myself once in a while.
I forgot where you're going?
Yes.
We've elected you the mayor.
Yes, and I think I need a crosswalk. But to answer your question, Gary, we're going to look into that to see because it has to be constitutional. And there are certain things that have to apply. That if a police officer, believe us or not, gets a call, have probable cause, and they approach somebody and they take off running, that's one of the components of enforcement. The courts have upheld that. So it's kind of a complicated thin line. And anything that we implement, we want to make sure that it pass, constitutional muster. We're not going to just pick on people. We want to make sure that it's legal to do. Okay.
I'm thankful that you're the mayor, and I know you're going to do a good job. You may have already touched on this, but I have trouble hearing, so if you did,
Okay.
excuse me. I think we live in a relatively safe community. I hear all kinds of reports of violence in downtown Cincinnati and, of course, Dayton and Columbus. But the main thing I guess I'm concerned about is the drug problem we seem to have. Is there any concern that we could maybe get some plans in place that would ensure that the drug problem doesn't get out of hand or it doesn't cause safety issues for the citizens of the community?
Yeah. I can tell you this. Across the United States, drug abuse is the number one problem in the United States. Because so many things, you read about bizarre behavior. And if you track it back, there's probably a drug issue. So to answer your question, yes, there are things that can be done to slow that down. We're not going to eliminate every drug problem in Wilmington, Ohio, but we're not going to allow it to go unenforced. So we're going to obviously take a hard look at that. And we have a new chief at, I guess it's 1 o'clock. We're going to meet with him for about 2 hours. We want to get his feelings on these things that we're talking about because it's important. So, Bill, you got a question?
Yeah, talk about downtown. Most small towns have the same problem with revitalizing. The only town around here that I know of is Yellow Springs.
Yeah.
And they got ice cream parlors and you enjoy walking down the street. And I think Taylor Sucker did a good job on getting those buildings painted. But what can you do to bring people back into downtown so it's a nice place to walk aside from working theaters?
These are little things, but I did talk to the street superintendent. And when the weather gets warmer, we want to wash all the sidewalks because, every night we have airplanes, jets flying over dropping fuel. The traffic downtown causes the sidewalks to be black. We don't have enough lighting at night. If you go downtown, it's relatively dark. It's not safe. And so those are some of the things we need to do cosmetically. The other thing that we have to do is entice people to open businesses.
But you gotta have stores.
We do. That's the thing. We've got a lot of buildings there, but they're filled by attorneys' offices. And I'm not criticizing attorneys, but we would like to see it as retail. The problem too, when the city built the city building where they built it, they eliminated a street and a half of retail space, which will never recover. So we have to work with what we have, but I think if we can fill those and have a little more diverse retail downtown, will be better. So we've got enough to keep us busy.
The second issue is nobody wants to hear this. Frankly, nobody here pays taxes, city taxes. They only tax the income.
We can fix that.
I I hate to pay taxes too.
Somebody woke up over there.
But it doesn't seem to me fair that those with upper incomes avoid most taxes in this town. You have a 1% tax on earnings, so McDonald's employees pay 1%. And people who have $100,000 in dividends aren't paying anything to the town.
I've been in office 30 days, so I understand. Like I said, I'm a conservative when it comes to taxes
So am I.
and funding and those kind of things. But obviously, too, there has to be services in town. We just haven't got that far to talk about, the tax structure yet. But down the road, we probably will. Mike?
So two things, a big win for Wilmington with the water department. And when I say the water department, the legal, difficult work of going up against the Army Corps of Engineers,
Yes.
saving that millions of dollars, and then tied to that too is a flat rate maintenance fee, which is terrific. So whoever negotiated that,
Yes.
if you have avenues to tell them thank you, that's a big win for the city. And there's a case where government gets out of control and spends money and starts charging back entities, and it's not legally right. And someone had to fight that tooth and nail to win that.
And I signed that last Thursday, but that's been going on for 5 years.
Yes.
Litigation. And there were two people actually responsible, Brian Shadiker
Yeah.
and Rick Schaefer. And unfortunately, Rick Schaefer, who's been in charge of wastewater management, he lives in Columbus, and he took a job up there to be close to his family. His dad's ill. So his last day is the middle of February. Hate to lose him. Just going to be almost impossible to replace him. He gets a lot of grant money for the city, but he was one of the architects of the settlement. So a week ago, the attorneys from Wilmington came in and outlined all of the things that the Army Corps of Engineers was using that money for. It was just ridiculous. They had like a mascot, somebody had dressed up like you see at the bingo games. And they used the money, taxpayer money from Wilmington to do these things. On and on and on and on. We stopped them. So that was a good thing.
And then the
He's
second,
a hell of a legacy.
What's that?
He's leaving with a hell of a legacy.
He is. He's a good man. We hate to see him go, but we understand the personal side of it.
so the second is just a comment. You don't have to reply. As big as our city is, we should, and maybe we have an HR professional.
We do.
And we've been through some issues with the police department. I would hope we have a employee handbook.
We do.
And I hope we get a little more proactive of pulling people into a room and reinforcing the handbook. And I know we've got at least one lawsuit still, or one court, the Brett Ruddick issue in front of us. Are there any other issues that you're aware of that are going to be coming down the pike soon?
Hopefully not, but what you're saying is exactly the way I feel about it. Because it's the only way you can stop this bleeding that's been going on now for 5 years. Just bad behavior, seem like no consequences. People get suspended, taxpayers pay their salary for 5 years, and then there's a settlement. And on and on and on. If you look at the settlements in the last 5 years, probably approaching $1 million.
Crazy.
And the way that you deal with that's exactly what you're saying. We do have a professional HR person. Danny Mongol came back, and he had been here for 20 years. He knows the players. He's been at it for 40 years, a no-nonsense guy. And I can tell you, we're very serious about fixing these things. So,
Good.
yeah. Anyway, I appreciate your time and having me out here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for what you do.